Alright guys, TouchGrab here back again today. Hope you're all enjoying your Tuesday, and today I wanted to discuss a topic which has come up over the last 24 hours or so, which I really haven't talked about in the past, so I thought it'd be quite interesting to go into it today, talking about the importance of friendship and networking in getting a spot on a professional team, and some of the annoyances and the frustrations that some of the amateur guys have had, to what degree those are valid, to what degree they should be networking better and harder, and etc, etc. These are the kind of topics we're going to go into today. Some interesting discussion from the pros on this last night, also some comments on Reddit that I wanted to go through as well. And this is a very intriguing topic in my opinion. So yeah, leave your thoughts down below as always. Like if you enjoy, subscribe if you are new. First of all, wanted to discuss a patch which is, I'm pretty sure, just gone live in Modern Warfare. Really, they didn't change anything like that's going to be relevant for competitive at all. Even that glitch in Search and Destroy where you could, we've talked about it the last couple of days really, you go up to a wall, if it says you can mount, then the enemy isn't planting the bomb. If that option disappears, then they are planting the bomb, it's in your field of view. Really not a good glitch to be in the game. And so yeah, that's in the game, and I'm not sure that's actually been removed on this patch because it doesn't mention it in the patch notes. These are the only ones that may be relevant for competitive in terms of the weapon changes here. But yeah, even then, 725 and AUG, they're not going to be relevant, so not too much has changed today in that fashion. I wanted to run this past you guys as well. Crimsix says, I'm all for fans supporting whatever team you like, that's dope, but if you support one, that doesn't mean you have to bash everyone else. The CoD community needs to change, let's make the scene even better. And he follows this up replying to a guy that says, rivalries are the best IMO, player versus player rivalries are good, but when fans try and get involved in said rivalry, now that's just whack. Just enjoy the show. You shouldn't dislike someone just because of what someone else does. That's some hive mind type stuff. Interesting comments here from Crimsix. I think this is quite interesting because when he was on the OpTic gaming team, I don't think he did a lot of the whole, oh yeah, don't go after their fan base or whatever. So I think maybe a little bit of double standards. But anyway, I thought it was quite interesting. So this is the key point over the last 24 hours. This is what I'm going to get into. The New York Subliners, and maybe there'll be more confirmations of substitutes over the coming days or the coming hours potentially. They announced a substitute player on their team. So their main roster is going to be Temp, it's Attach, it's Zuma, I think Zero is on that team, and then Accuracy rounds out the squad. They've been announcing substitutes. Here we go with Nick, Happy, Suda. So OP Suda, welcome to the Ambox family. You might find it interesting here why the image is just him from in like a CoD World League jersey from Black Ops 3. Pretty much that's because he hasn't really competed since, well, Infinite Warfare really. I think he was on TK. We'll have a look at some of his LAN placements in a second here. And, you know, what to really make of this? Because this is an interesting pickup, right? This is not someone where if you are building a roster of who you're going to have as your substitutes, Happy would have been way off the list of the kind of players you were considering. He's a guy that I'm sure a lot of you haven't even heard of if you've been around relatively recently. Decent player back in the day, but by no means spectacular. But what is well known about him is he's friends with the guys on the team, especially Temp. I think he gets along with very well, and that really sparked some discussion here. So that's what we're going to go into, whether this is fair, whether, you know, it's some interesting takes on either side of the fence. So let's make sure this is fitting all in your screen right here. Probably that should just about do it. So these are all the LAN events he's ever played. Back in Ghost he played, and then in Advanced Warfare, teams straight away with Accuracy. So of course Accuracy on this New York Subliners team as well. Happy, Sender, and Lawless, and Sender was also kind of jumping to his defense as well on Twitter. So definitely some things either side of it. Played on, you know, Accuracy as well. Team Orbit, then into Black Ops 3. Was on Cloud9 for a little bit with Havoc, Llama God, and Assault. This is a pretty well-known team back in the day. The Theory, Chan, Goonjar squad as well. Then going into the Infinite Warfare season, if this still just about fits in your screen, it should be okay. Maybe just make this one a little tick smaller. So yeah, this is what happened in the Infinite Warfare season. He was on Team Caliber, Theory, Goonjar, Happy, and Chan. At the end of the season, they brought in Accuracy as well. So he's clearly friends with him. Pretty sure he's friends with Temp as well. And then World War II, really, I mean, look at these results. Like, nothing spectacular, right? The only LAN events he's ever won are kind of local events, I guess you could call them. ETG, made some finals at another one of these tournaments when he was in that CLG team, but still, look, these impressives on these placings on Team Caliber, hardly impressive at all. And you know, okay, he did play with like Simp and Bafeezy at this tournament, but that was kind of like a pickup situation. The performances at actual events, like, he's never really hit the top tier of Call of Duty. He's played with some, I guess you could say, tier 1 players, tier 1, tier 2 players, but he's never really been there himself in his career, right? And in Black Ops 4, yeah, he played a few LAN events here or there, went to the amateur finals, placed a top 96 alongside this squad. So you can see clearly, picking up this team, some guys that were kind of known, like Fellow and Goonja, that were actually playing in that season. Be able to play along those guys clearly shows he has some friendship ties still, considering he really hadn't really done anything since, Infinite Warfare had a decent result at Anaheim, top 12. That's about the best he'd come in the last few years. So the fact he's getting picked up to New York here is clearly not just off merit, right? But there maybe is good reasons behind it that we could look into. One of the interesting points I thought is, say Los Angeles Guerillas, right? A guy like Aches, if he's making the decisions surrounding the roster on that team, what are the chances that he's going to pick someone up that might actively be able to replace him on the team? That's the thought process of some of these guys. Not necessarily a thought process that you want to have, but I know that the pros are clearly having a major decision making here in who they pick up as their substitutes. Typically, you would expect a general manager or something to do it. In a traditional sport, like a soccer or something like that. The substitutes, the guys on the bench, those aren't guys that you as a player are really going to control. It's going to be the management staff, the boss, the manager of the team, the gaffer, as I guess they're called. These are the guys making the decisions who's going to be bringing into the squad, who's going to sit on the substitute bench. And if you're a starting player, you've got to be worried about them the whole time taking your spot. And as a result, you've got to keep pushing yourself to be better. If players have the opportunity, they wouldn't do that. They'd stack the bench of players that aren't necessarily going to threaten their spot on the starting roster and can therefore sit in peace relatively, rather than picking up a young talent that maybe could displace you later on in the season, which I'm sure a lot of players don't want. So that's obviously not an ideal situation the way it's going right now. Maybe Happy falls into that box to some degree, but also the guys obviously get along with him pretty well, and to some degree it's like, well, the minimum salary in the league is $50,000. We'll give our mate Happy 50 grand for this year because he has to be a substitute on the team. We need 2 substitutes at the minimum. We're not going to make a change. We think our roster's going to be perfect. We're not going to have any chemistry issues, whatever. And of course, that's an issue, right? We saw in the last season when OpTic Gaming had to sub in Zuma in that part of the season when Dashi couldn't make it. There are some situations that happen where players have issues and things don't go as planned. You really need, in my opinion, competent substitutes. But maybe New York Subliners think that Happy can be that for their team, and it's definitely possible. So really it was kicked off here when Pentagram said the following. So of course he's on UYU, he won the first 2K of the season. How to make it into any professional league, work your ass off day in, day out, become very skilled in that profession, do what it takes to beat the best, how you make it into the CDL, put in your least amount of effort, place anywhere from top 24 to last place, be best friends with the pros. And he's straight up at Happy. And these tweets have since been deleted. Of course, a lot of people went back, and as we'll see in a second, talking about the power of networking and friendship and social relationships and stuff like that. And obviously this doesn't look very good in that light, right? But at the same time, I think he does have a point. So Kenny replies to these couple of tweets that have been deleted. You've been tweeting recklessly lately. I believe this was replying to Pentagram, yeah, as we can see right here. And what makes those people deserve it, kind of implying that, he doesn't, Kenny doesn't think he deserves it himself, or whether he thinks Pentagram does think he deserves it himself, or whatever. So definitely some going back and forth here. Parasite, of course, in a similar position to Pentagram, says placing, going to the events, being on Pro Team Spry, being active in the scene. One player in specific has been to one event and maybe a handful since Black Ops 3. Pretty much talking about Happy, I think. One thing I can agree with on this list is that players not going to events for a while, but one thing I will say is roasting the person for giving that opportunity is stupid, which I think is fair enough. Of course, Happy in this position, he's not going to turn it down, and he's worked to some degree to get to this position, I think. But of course, it's difficult to say. So this is another thing I wanted to get into, really, before I get into the whole networking thing and look at some Reddit comments. This is a very interesting point from Looney, and it's a very complicated one. So effectively, what happens in the upcoming season is you have the pro teams, and if you're a substitute on the pro team, it's possible that you can play in the path to pro, but not guaranteed. Only if your team has an amateur, has like a what do they call it, challengers team, right, on the side of the professional team. If that's the case, then you have what's called a two-way contract, if you have that in place, and you as the substitute for the main team can also play on that challengers team with the same organization. But you can't just play on any old organization, or it's very difficult to do so, if you're a substitute. So what Looney's getting at here is if Pentagram was a substitute on the Dallas Empire, let's say he doesn't play a single game the whole season, he doesn't even have the opportunity, if the Dallas Empire don't have a challengers team, which they may very well not as Looney goes into, he won't even get an opportunity to play. So honestly, it might be better for Pentagram to play the path to pro, and then for the very next season, then he can start getting picked up by the best teams in theory. As Drill says, the CDL system was hoping that the game would require specialist game mode subs that interchange. So when traveling, it's hard to compete with the Path to Pro roster, but it doesn't really seem to be the case, as Drill says right here. And then Looney goes on to say, can only be a two-way if your franchise has an academy team. I guess that's the word I was looking for, from what I know, only 2 to 3 franchises have. And I guess he's saying that because he doesn't think the Dallas Empire does. Very interesting topic of discussion that I'm sure we could go into in some depth. And then Clayster goes on to talk about, funny to me how most people in the COD space are just now realizing that networking is one of the most important aspects of climbing the ladder in anything, which, okay, definitely fair enough, but I think Clayster is kind of missing the point here to some degree, because a guy like Pentagram, for example, or let's look at it from a slightly different angle here. So Happy gets this spot on the substitute roster of the New York Subliners. He did that by networking with a few years ago, playing with pros back in the Advanced Warfare days and being friends with them and socializing and all of this stuff. Fair enough, not taking anything away from him. He's done a good job to earn that spot in that degree. Real question is whether that should be a valid decision behind choosing a player. If I was a manager for a team like that, I definitely wouldn't be choosing this player. I'd be choosing a player that can push my starters, can potentially be a search and destroy substitute, can potentially be valuable in terms of being like a content creator, or like Doug is, of course, on this Subliners team as well, which is a name I haven't even mentioned so far this video. That's the kind of people I'd be going after, right? A guy like a Doug or a guy like a Mutex or something who can help with search and destroy. Not really sure what Happy's doing here, and therefore I feel like a lot of it is the pros' decision making behind this rather than any specific reasoning. Another thought process on this, another little tangent to what Clayster's saying, is guys like Pentagram, guys who are, just turned 18, back in the day when Happy was making these friendships, back in like the Ghost Advanced Warfare days, these guys couldn't even compete. They were like 13, 14, they didn't even have a chance of getting in there with the pros unless they were god tier, like a guy like Ilya or a guy like Simp, right? Without that possibility, very difficult to network when you're a young guy, whereas if you're an older guy, maybe nowhere near as skilled as some of the younger guys are, you had more of a chance back in the day. So those are just some thoughts on that, and honestly, I've kind of spoken for long enough here, but I just want to go through a couple of Reddit things. I just saw this on Reddit from u/b2dn, best friend application, specify top 5 favorites, circle which one, winter or summer, vanilla or chocolate, etc, etc. That's how you apply to be in the COD League. And as Aqua PSN Box says, it trivializes the Path to Pro system. If you win a Path to Pro event this season and you absolutely dominate it, are you going to be considered for a substitute spot? There's no chance you are. Teams are already signing their substitutes. Yes, they have a few more substitute spots if they want to go into it, but it's highly unlikely they will because they have a salary cap and all of this stuff. Really, the only way you could do it is if you get on a substitute bench on a team, then you team with one of those players, then potentially something will work out there. But still, it's very difficult. Having a franchise league that the players are allowed to control is full-on idiotic, and that's kind of what I'm getting at in this video. I kind of wanted to brush past this because I discussed it with Aches. And I think this is a pretty good way to close out from Osmunga here. And this was a reply from Confluency to the original tweet of Pentagram saying, he's getting a reality check. You think real life is about how good you are at something. It's about who you know and how well you manage your image in relationships. I think there's definitely some truth to that. But as I talked about, it's very difficult in this ecosystem for a guy like him to actually have made that impression throughout his career. And, as Osmunga says here, he definitely thinks that in esports and in Call of Duty, it should be based on your performance and how good you are is how you get picked up. And I think that if someone impartial was managing these teams and making the decisions, Happy would not be a person that's on the bench, right? That's my overall opinion, which is why I don't think it's unfair or anything. I don't want to take anything away from Happy. Just an observation, but I don't think that would be the case if there was complete impartiality. Maybe there's something in that. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Like if you did, subscribe if you're new as always. Thanks for watching as always. I'll see you next time.